Welcome back to the 99, where we're focused on brewing a better competitive Commander. I'm your host, Patrick Marlett, and today we're talking about threat assessment. Commander is a casual format, but if you want to play it at its most competitive level, to where the experience is as exhilarating as it is enjoyable for every player at the table, then you need to learn about threat assessment. If this term is new to you, this will be a great start to getting into cEDH, and if not, this will be a great guide for clarifying how you should approach cEDH to have the best possible experience. But before we get into the video today, if you tune in weekly to enjoy the content here on the 99 and have wanted to help support it, the best way to do so is of course with a pledge via Patreon. There's a link in the description notating all the benefits you'll receive, but our Brew Masters get an episode specifically for them, and the first of which is going to air this April. Also, our Brew Crew members get to have their voices and opinions heard at the end of our video during our monthly discussion. Of course, I'll get to that in just a second. Also, guys, if you want to help support the channel indirectly, the best way to do so is via TCG Player. There's a link in the description to their website, and if you use that link, a portion of the proceeds will go to help support the channel. So thank you so much for doing so. And now on to our monthlies for the month of April. Our topic is, what do you feel are the defining characteristics of cEDH? A simple question, but a difficult one to answer, as cEDH is Commander. Commander is Commander. It is all one format. It's just an acronym for saying Competitive Elder Dragon Highlander. However, what do you feel separates competitive players from more casual players in the Commander format? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and of course, hang tight to the end of our video for the words of one of our Brew Crew and our Brew Masters on this very topic. Now, before we dive into the discussion today, I need to stress that cEDH, that is to say Commander, is a casual format. We cannot expect everyone to have perfect threat assessment every single game. It's just never going to happen. However, I do hope that the fundamentals I offer you today will help you and others moving forward. But in regards to threat assessment for the Commander format, there are 4 fundamentals to keep in mind. 1. This is a 4-player game. 2. Understanding colors and commanders. 3. Understanding your impact. And 4. Emotionally playing. This is not 1v1, 3v1, which the game can quickly devolve into, 2v2, or anything in between. Commander is a 4-person, free-for-all format in which your spot at the table as well as turn order dictate much of how the game will play out. So when a problem arises and you are asked for a solution, if you are not immediately next in priority order, it is not up to you to be the board's savior, whether you have the solution or not. That information is held by you for when you choose to divulge it. Please use tact when giving any information to the table. On that same note, do not ever be the player to answer all the board's problems. Now, this will require some knowledge on your part to know what is truly problematic for the board, and we'll get into that in a second. But if you use all your resources to stop the other players, well, Commander can very quickly become a 3-person format. Again, you do not need to be the board's savior. That is why you will lose games. Lastly, and most importantly, remember to save any of your resources for what is reasonably the last moment in which you can interact with the board. If you've ever wondered why cEDH is rampant with low mana value, high efficiency, instant speed spells, it's because being able to react at this speed with high efficiency cards provides you the opportunity to save up on your resources to see whether or not you need to cast a spell or not. Remember, your opponents are resources too. Understanding the basic strategies and play lines of cEDH lists in singular and or multiple colors is essential. Now, you can't be expected to know the game plan of every single list when you sit down at the table, but this experience is the benchmark for your threat assessment. For example, at the same table, there is a Gitrog player and a Teshar player. You notice that the Gitrog player has a discard utility on board, as well as the Gitrog in play. This strategy is well known in the cEDH community and unique to this Golgari commander, but if that player has a Dakmor salvage in hand, they're likely in a winning position. However, across the table from the Gitrog player is a Teshar player with both Teshar and a Myr Retriever on the battlefield. Much like Gitrog, Teshar is a core part of this deck strategy. However, unlike Gitrog, Teshar requires far more moving parts. Not only will this list need a sack outlet on board to get the job done, it may also need a payoff in addition to the sack outlet. And that could be anything from a card that will assist you in drawing the deck to a card that might assist you in damaging out the board. So when evaluating the threats of these two lists, one clearly seems to be in a better position. Obviously, there are far more factors that go into evaluating threats beyond the board states. How many cards do these players have left in their hands? What might be in the opposing graveyards at this point? How many of their core cards are in exile? There's so much more to take into account in assessing what is a more threatening board state. But once you have knowledge of the basic strategies of your opposing list, then you'll be in a good spot. And if you don't know your opponent's deck strategy, ask. This is a casual format. If someone is sitting across from me at my kitchen table and withholding that information, they can get off my table, because the only person that this hurts is you. The root cause of many a misplay, many a bad play, is a lack of knowledge. Understanding what each opposing deck does will help everyone make more informed decisions. Just be reasonable. I inform my opponents exactly what my deck is trying to do before any in-game actions take place. Heck, even during the game, if there's any confusion, I will let my opponents know what my deck wants to do. That way they don't get confused over what strategy I'm trying to do or what goal I'm trying to accomplish with my plays. Knowledge is power, and not just for you. Understanding your impact on a game is of dire importance, and if you are new to cEDH, I implore you, please start with a proactive list. It's what we in the community would call a solitary deck. It's ill-concerned about what my opponents are doing, and maybe it packs a little bit of interaction, a little bit of removal, but it's mostly concerned with comboing out quickly, doing a thing, and moving on to the next game. It requires the least amount of foresight. Do not play a control deck, and certainly do not play a stacks list. Smokestacks being the epitome of what stacks is. If that term is new to you, it's all about resource denial. In common Commander stacks list, you'll run cards like Sphere of Resistance, Rule of Law, and Collector Oof. Cards that tax, change the rules, and deny your opponents of resources they've been playing out, causing advantage for some and disadvantage for others. If you don't know how your stacks will affect the three other players at the table, you will inadvertently tip the scale in someone else's favor. Do not play stacks until you've mastered proactive and control magic. Otherwise, you run the risk of harming everyone's experience, including yours. Stacks is the most difficult archetype to play, and not for beginners. Now, understanding your impact on the game is marked not only by the actions you take, but your inactions. This leads back to what I was saying earlier, where you are not the board savior and your opponents are resources. So instead of letting the Tymna player draw cards off of you because you're using your creatures to swing at the Devesh, have that player swing at some thralls instead. Instead of casting Silence in response to the Underworld Breach on the stack, see what your two opponents have first. Haste makes waste, provided you suspect answers may come from your two other resources. And sometimes folks will skip priority and handle the problem for you, which is an entirely separate issue, but a favorable one at that. Just remember that haste makes waste, and your combat decisions have relevance. Now, when taking a mulligan with any deck strategy, your position in turn order as well as what list are at the table will inform how much you can mulligan and what's keepable. If second in turn order and the player before you has just played a mana crypt into an arcane signet into a mana vault with a land on board, now is likely not the time to play your turn 1 Trinity Sphere, unless you thoroughly believe you can stop this one player, as you'll likely be cutting only 2 opponents out. And remember, these players are resources. If going last, unless your strategy is dead set on winning between turns 1 and 3, refrain from taking too aggressive a mulligan to where you take yourself out of the game. Crossing your fingers on another player's turn 1 Wheel of Fortune or Time Twister is not a sound strategy. A suboptimal start is better than a non-start. The best games occur when all players are of sound mind and strategy, which leads me to my final point. Emotional plays. In other words, your feelings towards a situation versus the reality of the situation. This will largely adjust itself as you become accustomed to the legendaries, colors, or color pairings at your local table, but there is a flip side to the threat assessment coin we need to discuss. Poor threat assessment can come from being ill-informed, but equally from your emotional investment in the game. If you feel like you're being targeted or punished by your opponents as you're taking actions, this can cause you to warp your decision-making and make bad plays, oftentimes from other bad plays, and this cycle is unhealthy. These actions are often considered petty or spite plays. Now look, I'm not here to be your emotional coach. Lord knows I get very heated with some games, but it's important to keep your emotions separate from what's happening in game, to not let your feelings impact or inform your plays. And not just for the person feeling targeted, but everyone at the table. Be good to each other, and your experience, trust me, both in and out of game, will be far better. However, also understand that if you are at a table and yours is the sole list that contains black, you will be attacked. If you're running a lot of stacks and the game's gone longer than 45 minutes, because Lord knows cEDH players don't like long games, you will be attacked. Because player removal, oftentimes the best answer. People have an anticipation that lists that run black oftentimes use their life as a resource. You're gonna get attacked. So it's less so that folks are targeting you, and moreover, that they anticipate you as a threat. Take it that way, and trust me, you'll be less offended because it's oftentimes not you. It's your deck. Sometimes it's you though when it pertains to sacks. You really need to stick with a proactive list first, trust me. Move on to control magic and then maybe you can graduate to running that stacks list you've always wanted to. Just have a game plan with it, will ya? Now guys, that is it, my fundamentals on threat assessment. Are there any fundamentals you'd like to add to this list? And to end this video, as I do with all my videos, I like to thank one lucky random Patreon member, and that Patreon member today is Frank Burdine. Frank is a long-standing Brew Baby member, pledging at that Brewmaster tier, but taking none of the credit. Frank, you are among the best. And for his thoughts on the monthly topic, I'll be reading for Brew Crew member Rodrigo Avila. The initial characteristic that comes to mind is preventing your opponents from winning the game. Another characteristic that gets blown out of proportion is you have to have all the best cards, and if you don't, your group must allow you to play with proxies. There are plenty of answers out there in the 1 to 2 mana value range. Finding these hidden gems is the best part of Magic. It's always fun to beat a table with the worst deck. That's why Patrick doesn't brew for blue, I assume. While there are other reasons I don't brew for blue, it's mostly in silent protest to the fact that other colors don't get counterspells while blue gets a little bit of everything. Ever since the beginning, what is this hard on for blue, Watsy? Can you explain it to me? I'd love to know. But guys, that is it for the fundamentals of threat assessment. Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the monthly topic as well as the discussion today. My name is Patrick Marlette, and happy brewing, babies.